Okay, hello everyone. Don't run away. My name is Rafał Piotrowski. I'm IT architect in Innovation Lab in BNP Paribas, Poland. I'm pretty happy to be here with you. Together with me, two colleagues.
Leszek Jaskierny from DXC.
So, hi, hello, my name is Tomasz Dzierżanowski and I'm the Chief Architect of BNP Paribas, Polska.
It's pretty difficult to be on this stage right after such a show that Piotr gave us. I'm pretty happy our logo was not on the screen when we had all the information about the security leaks, so I'm pretty happy. We want to talk a little bit about what has already been touched by Piotr. It's somehow connected to security, but it's connected to payments. I wanted to start our presentation, our discussion, from a few disclaimers. As we stand here together, three of us, we have about 60 years of experience in corporate IT, so we are architects. We are not gods of pixel-perfect presentations, so we not have that perfect slides as Piotr had. However, we wanted to talk about some subjects that might be really interesting for you, especially if you are considering partnering with a bank and utilizing new business models. So this I hope will be beneficiary for both sides. So please listen to what we have to say about our topic. Another thing about the elephant, it's just a metaphor. We treat organizations as bank, so huge, so complex. We treat it as a bank, and together we try to push it a little bit towards the world outside, which is pretty fast and it's changing really rapidly. So we want to do our business with all kinds of organizations like startups. So in order to do so, we need to implement new kinds of technologies. We need to be prepared for the speed and agility that startups have. And we need to be prepared that our complexity might actually kill them, which we, of course, don't want. So I wanted to start with a question because it's a dev stage. So I wanted to start with a simple question. How many of you have already, in your work, together with your partners, utilized APIs? Okay, we got a few hands. How many of you have touched a subject of API gateway? Sounds fairly new. Okay.
So how many of you ever heard about the PSD or open banking regulation for banking industries?
Okay, so maybe simpler question. How many of you is using Uber application? No one? No one is using Uber?
Uber. The question is, how many of you are using Uber?
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, don't be shy.
This is what we expecting. And what is important with API economy, everything is about connecting things. Uber does not have cars, does not have drivers, but is the biggest, world largest taxi company. It's all about APIs. It's all about connectivity of different pieces together. And the slide that we see, the simple router, is demonstrating the core of APIs. Standard interface, very easy to plug in, very easy to move forward.
So right, the APIs. Seems to be nothing new. We are doing APIs since I really do not remember when we started doing them. And you know, a dear friend of mine used to say that New Year almost always give us a chance to set up a new enterprise service bus to hide what we've done last year, and we were doing this year by year by year. Because you probably know or probably don't, in huge industries, in huge enterprises, we have a lot of legacy aspects. Not everything is perfect, not everything is running perfectly. So almost year by year we are starting discussion. Let's try to clean up this mess. Let's try to create a target solution. In fact, the target solution is one of my favorite terms. So year by year, we are trying to do the target solution, and almost always we start this with defining. Let's try to define the target set of APIs, the APIs that will cover everything that is behind, the APIs that decouple our backend applications, and etc., and etc. And we were doing this year by year, almost always failing badly, and etc. But right now, there is something fresh on the market. I do not want to say this is new, because in fact, this is API gateways are not something new, but this is something fresh. By fresh, I mean a real nice rebalance of the responsibilities. When we talk about API gateways, we should think about more like API exposure. So we should think about decorating of our APIs, adding some kind of additive features like monitoring, throttling, limitation, some kind of logging, security on different layers, on transport layer, features related with more advanced security aspects like authorization and etc. So, yeah, so definitely the appization is a global trend right now on the market. And once again, this is nothing new. Everyone are doing APIs and do this for 20 years. But for some of us, there is a lot of new thinking in this situation. Some of us, and especially banks, really need some kind of motivation and stimulation to enter this API world, to expose what we have inside through the APIs. And in our case, this is a regulation. The regulation that is called PSD. I would say everything begins a couple of years ago when the first version of PSD, so the payment regulation, was published, and all of the banks were obliged to implement the APIs. Now we are doing the second version of PSD regulation, so we are exposing another set of APIs. There is a discussion about third version of APIs, and what we found and how our way of thinking was changed during this discussion is right now we are trying to find also a business inside. Because this is true. Since the very beginning of the PSD regulation, we treat this as something that was given to us. So the regulation, you need to implement this regulation. If not, something wrong will happen. But right now the situation is changing. We are trying to find a business inside this. But still there is a lot of pros and cons. You know, I'm not a brave guy, so I'm almost always afraid of something. So guys, will you really grant an access to the third-party provider, to your bank account, to your bank information, and etc.? Because I'm not so brave.
Yes, actually, as DXC, we started PSD2 implementation 6 months ago at BNPP. And at that time, our project was mainly to satisfy regulatory requirements. But over time, during the project, we realized that API gateway, APIs overall, may become backbone of modern IT infrastructure of the bank. And we discovered that many areas of IT of the bank is dependent on API, and we can significantly improve it, not only by exposing APIs externally to third-party payment providers, but also internally in the bank.
So Leszek, how you will convince me that there is security behind that? How you will convince me that my data or my personal finance will not be stolen? Everything is secure, this will work. So now everyone who will follow the standard will be a beneficiary of it without any risk.
We heard a lot about security on previous presentations, so this is risky theme, but it's all about trust. And what is important, with open APIs, we are going really from security to trust. Everybody, at the end of the day, have to trust someone, because otherwise we won't be able to use any internet services at all. So what we offer in with APIs is possibility to use trusted providers. Do you ever use login with Facebook or log in with goggles, for example.
Yes, I was using login with Facebook, login with Google, but are there any similarities related to this?
And the same actually in our API infrastructure we can use to log in with BNP or log in with other bank. What is also important, when you allow third-party payment provider, a third-party vendor to initiate payment on your behalf, you do not need to share any personal data with this provider, this vendor. And this is very important aspect of how PSD2 is changing payment infrastructure. Currently, you need to share data with PayU, with other payment providers. With PSD2, payment provider would require minimal set of information about you, only maybe your name, your PESEL, that's something that they already have. And that is sufficient to initialize payment. Everything else, you as a customer will do on the bank side, just confirming that information coming from third party are legitimate. What is also important, everything that is implemented on API gateway is based on standards. So it's open for third party on one end. On the other end, we're trying to make sure that it meets the highest security standards. And for you, what other benefits do you see from this API economy in the bank?
You know, from the perspective of the API policy and etc., this is not only about the PSD, because all of the discussion about API gateways, API exposure, integration, gives us a huge chance, I would say, to leverage the balance between what we are doing in our backend application. We want to treat them in future as a resource server, real resource server, and service providers. For sure, this is probably something obvious for you, but as we said, not for all of the industries. We are following this path right now, so we are not where we want to be right now. So leveraging the balance between what our backend application are doing and what our integration middleware is doing. So this is something very big for us. So treating integration layer not as an integration layer, but as an API exposure layer, and follow the dogma of smart endpoints and dump pipes. Another buzzword, but extremely important in this ecosystem. So maybe Leszek or Rafał, please tell me, because in my opinion also this API economy changes a lot in the relations with third parties, in the relation with fintechs. This gives us a lot of opportunities to treat things in another way that we've made during last years. So,
yeah, this is something that we actually perceive as the biggest opportunity that we've had for years. We do have plenty of data. I wanted to use the word beginning with S, however, it's not a very good place to do so. We do have plenty of data about the client, about his habits, about what he does with his money. And now with this data, we can actually build some new business models together with external partners. And API gateway and open banking model approach actually gives us the opportunity to fail fast in terms of building new cooperation model with startup or with a smaller partner. We do have long-term relationships with big vendors like DXC, for example, which are actually already acknowledged through a huge process of implementing new solutions, implementing new values for our customers utilizing their technology. However, if we speak about organizations or partners that are way smaller and they are more prone to risks concerning, for example, their finance part of the cooperation with such a big organization as a bank, I think myself that it's a big opportunity for them to actually check whether the idea, whether the business model they want to build can actually be achieved using the data of the bank without the hassle that it will take 1.5 years just to validate whether their idea was good. So this is something that really enables us to take all this huge spaghetti of IT that we have underneath our
Rafał,
external layer.
I think this is worth to repeat because some things that we are expressing probably are not obvious for us. We can still thinking, what the heck are those guys are talking about? So once again, we are talking about industries where we have far more than 1,000 of applications, hundreds of multi-million projects, and for us, opportunity to break the hard link of the delivery paths is something great. I mean, when we do not need to, or maybe in a different way, like Rafał says, whenever we are able to start a discussion with external third-party provider without starting the huge procedure and the huge engine of adjusting the whole environment is something great for us. We can handle all of the changes, we can face the changes, we can assess during the first phase when we are interacting with third party, we are able to expose the API, we are able to experiment, do some kind of proof of concept, we do not need to launch a huge project, and etc. and etc. So this is something great for us. I believe, Leszek, there is a very interesting point like here because I'm representing a client here. I'm from bank. You are from vendor. And you are saying that implementation of API gateway will allow us to breaking a vendor lock, which is a real nightmare. Trust me or not, this is really a real nightmare.
This is a very interesting point. But as a vendor, we position ourselves as integrator, bringing to our customer bank the best components from the market. So we are also eager to experiment with products of fintechs, products of third parties that have the best components satisfying the requirements of our customer. And from this perspective, when we talk about open APIs, we also talk about agile development. We're talking about DevOps culture that allows us to very quickly experiment with new technologies, new components, new pieces that bring real value to customer. And what is important, with this approach, we are able to launch into production very, very quickly. So if we have nice component of the market that fits requirements with API approach, we are able to launch it really within weeks, not months. So this is really opportunity for not only for us, but for the bank and for third-party vendors to become visible and bring real value to customers.
So maybe once again to sum up. Today we as a bank, as we said, we want to expose our services as an APIs. And not only because the regulators say so, but because we want to do this. And I think this is what to mention when it would be, I would say, accessible for anyone who wants to use it. So I would say the middle of this year. So the projects are in progress. The final implementation of PSD regulation is at the middle of the September, as I remember. So something like that.
September.
Right now, we already exposed the set of sandboxes when you can try our APIs, you can send a request, you can check whatever it is that's secure here or not, whether I can access some kind of data or not. So this is, let's say, to sum up. So very wide aspect, how to handle integration in a huge enterprises. So from my perspective, if you will have any further question, do not hesitate to come to our box and ask. We will try to answer if we can.
So summing up, what I wanted to say is that at some point of time, by introducing iPhone, Steve Jobs made a huge twist in how the business is being run on their side. And he said that instead of building everything into the phone, they actually started treating it as a platform for doing stuff. So he said, there's an app for that. So I would like to be here on this stage in about a year or two, And I would like to hear some questions on how to do business with startups, how to do business with smaller partners, with other platforms. And I would like to state there's an API for that. So this is something that we are aiming for. We treat PSD2 regulation as an opportunity rather than a threat. We want to be more open. We want to do more business with different partners on different platforms. And as we only had a few minutes to talk about it, we would really like to see you at our booth. And if you have any questions, if you have any ideas that we could validate together, please do so. Don't hesitate. We also speak Polish as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you very much.